All right, so you are at an exciting point in the writing process. You are luckily at the point where you've been working on that power draft and you're getting ready to hand it off so that you can get some feedback from me. So before you do that, though, I do want you to go through a light round of editing. I don't expect it to be perfect. I feel like some people don't understand that when they're really close with their writing, it's so easy to overlook things. I know I am perfectly guilty of that. I will think I have edited so carefully and closely. I will have read through it several times, and somehow, I don't know how, I'll send the email or I'll print it out and be ready to hand someone a piece of paper, and there it is, a typo just staring me in the face. And so when we're really close to our writing and we've been working on it in depth, nonstop, we do tend to overlook these things. So I'm going to give you some tips today of how to, first of all, maybe avoid those typos or those errors, and really how to have a careful eye when it comes to doing those things. But also, I want you to remember too that you will have some time to continue editing your work after you get some feedback from me, when you're revising and editing and working towards the final version that will go in your final portfolio. So first, let's take a minute to talk about what editing is. So this means you are examining the small scale issues in your writing. It's certainly an essential part of your process. It may be a little tedious, but you do have to go through it, and you really should go through it after you have done as much revision work as possible. So this means you feel pretty good about your content, you've got some feedback on that, you feel solid in your organization of your piece, you've got it to a point where you are done looking at the big stuff. And it's more than just focusing on grammar. So a lot of times the word grammar is sort of this catch-all for, I don't know, just about anything really. When I think of grammar, I'm thinking of things like subject-verb agreement. That's grammar. But there's more than just grammar. There's a lot of different things you can look at when you're going through the editing process. So here's a list of even some things to look for with editing. And when I look at this list, I'm looking at formatting or subject-verb agreement or capitalization, comma issues, choppy sentences. That's really overwhelming, right? That's a lot of stuff to look for. So I wouldn't suggest going into editing blindly, especially if you feel like it's something that you struggle with. There are some strategies you can use to really help yourself make sure you're looking at all these things without feeling completely overwhelmed. One of the strategies that I teach students is the concept of star editing. So you can see that a star, of course, has 5 points, and that is a way to remember that you may have to walk yourself through your draft multiple times in order to tackle everything needed for editing. You will absolutely get sick of reading your paper, but this is a way to kind of go through this editing process without missing something. So with star editing, the first suggestion I have is to read what you're writing backwards. Now, this may not work forever for you. I think I might go insane if I'm writing an article for a journal and let's say it's 20 pages and I'm reading it backwards. That might be a bit too much, but right now it's a really good strategy until you feel really confident in your editing skills. So what I mean by reading it backwards is you start with, instead of the first sentence on your piece of writing, start with the last sentence. This sort of makes you divorce your mind from the content in your piece. So once you are reading from the beginning, you just get rolling. Maybe you get really into it. You're excited about what you wrote, or you're telling a story, like in your first project, if you're writing a narrative, and you forget what you're looking for. So you can start with the last sentence, look at it almost like just this is one sentence I'm editing, and work your way all the way back until you get to the first one. That's one strategy. But you would really have to do more, right? Because editing could also include looking for choppiness in your writing. So you do need to see how those sentences work together. So I would suggest reading it again from the beginning of your paper and look for sentence issues. Once you've done that, you could read it again. Just focus on word issues. Look at things like word choice, misused words. Just hone in on those word issues. Then you can read it for punctuation issues. So, did you put in commas at the right place? Did you use semicolons correctly? Did you put in one of the things I see missed quite often? And I know that students know that a question needs a question mark, but it's easy to miss that. Maybe you put in a period instead. And then you can read through the last time for grammatical or mechanical issues. So maybe you're looking at things like subject-verb agreement and making sure you have agreement there. Here's the STAR strategy again in a different way, if this helps you. So again, first you would read the essay backwards, one sentence at a time, catching as many errors as possible. Then you would read for sentence issues, and I've listed some here. You could read for word issues, listed some, punctuation issues, and of course, those final grammatical, mechanical issues. All right, so some final review here and some things to consider while you're editing. First, read it out loud. Read it slowly and look at the places where you stumble. If it's not running smoothly when you read it again. And if it still feels clunky, try to figure out what that is. Why is it not coming out the right way? I suggest reading it slowly too, because a lot of times we will skip words, or we think words are there. We've conjured them up in our mind, but we are missing. I can't tell you how many times I've left out the word the. So read it slowly and look at where you stumble. I also suggest you read your essay, or I use the word essay here, I'm using that word loosely. You're writing to someone. We do this a lot, especially in our face-to-face or live chat sessions in the Writing Center. Usually the tutor will say something like, okay, let's read your paper out loud so we can hear it and we can work through it together and I can get to know your writing. So a lot of times when you do this, you'll see those errors. It's just something about it that works. I also suggest, again, just like I told you on the previous slides, to read it multiple times. Don't try to tackle everything at once if that's just too overwhelming for you. I also suggest you not relinquish control. Don't email your paper to your mom and say, edit it for me, and just let them make all these changes without you seeing anything. It's a bad idea. I've seen some people make some bad mistakes by doing this. They didn't even know that someone didn't know how to use commas, and they got in trouble with that. You can have someone read your paper. That's a great idea. Again, that's what the Writing Center is for, and not just for editing. The Writing Center can do a lot of things. But if you do have someone give you some feedback on things like sentence level work, make sure they use the track changes feature, and that way you can have the final call on those particular issues. I also suggest, again, if you're needing some editing help, to work with someone like the Writing Center, because if someone inserts a comma for you, guess what? You're just going to need someone to do it for you again the next time you write something. Instead of just having someone else do it for you, learn how to do it. Learn how to do it yourself. The Writing Center is really great about being able to not only say, put a comma here, but also show you resources that explain why the comma goes there. That way you learn it yourself and you gain confidence in your editing skills. All right, don't forget to use your resources and double check things like punctuation and grammar and all those fun things. Al Purdue has a lot of resources. The Writing Center does. Everyone's an author. Your textbook has some really good tools for you as well. All right, use your resources such as in Microsoft Word. So there is a highlight feature, color codes, for example. You could highlight sentences that start the same way. You could highlight repeated words. You could highlight, maybe if you start every other sentence back to back with, for example, maybe you didn't notice it until you used some color coding. I also suggest you print your piece of writing to edit it. Again, there's something about just taking it off the computer and seeing it on the page. This is where I do my best editing. I still try to print my work to edit it because I always catch more. All right, and then think about your audience when considering things like word choice. So editing still has to have that audience in mind. All right, one more little thing. Oh, I forgot about the find feature. That's one of my favorite things in Microsoft Word. If you feel like you've seen a word used too much, you can go to the find feature, type it in. Let's say you type in the word very, and it'll bring up how many times it's used. And that might give you a clue that you're using it too much. So how do you turn in your Power Draft? Just a reminder, you will go to our course and find the Dropbox. You'll find the Dropbox for Project 1. You'll choose your file. And once it's been chosen, you click Add and Submit. And this should submit your work. You should get a D2L email notification that your project has been submitted. And then, of course, don't forget that your project should be submitted in a Microsoft Word file. I can work with PDFs. I don't prefer to with this because I really love the Microsoft Word comments feature. It's easier. It's just easier to me than working with that PDF. Everyone has Microsoft Word through their Outlook from MTSU, so just make sure you are submitting it in a .doc file. All right, good luck with editing, and again, don't feel like it has to be perfect. We can keep working on this as you work towards your final portfolio.